We all have that one drawer in our house, like in the kitchen or maybe out in the garage.
Oh, yeah. The graveyard of good intentions.
Exactly. You open it up and it's
That's a
just
great
this graveyard. You've got the dead AA batteries that you keep meaning to take to recycling.
Right.
You've got some mysterious tangled cords for, devices that haven't even existed for a decade.
The ones you're afraid to throw away because what if you need them?
Right. What if I need this weird USB cable from 2008? But usually, wedged all the way in the back of that drawer, there is this tool, maybe a high-end specialty wrench or like a really complex multi-tool that you bought for one highly specific project years ago.
Yeah, and you used it once.
Used it exactly once. And today, it's just sitting there. It hasn't been oiled. It hasn't been maintained. It's seizing up with rust. And if you actually needed to pull it out right now to fix something critical, it would be completely useless.
It has essentially become this, heavy, awkward paperweight. The physical object still exists in your drawer, but the function, the actual thing it was originally engineered to perform, has been entirely lost.
Yeah. And that incredibly mundane, universally relatable image of a useless tool is, it's the perfect entry point for today's deep dive.
Absolutely.
Because we are looking at this source material, this document we have, Hosea 8-8.pdf, and we are exploring the striking imagery found in the biblical book of Hosea, specifically Hosea 8.8, which talks about becoming a, quote, useless vessel.
Right, a useless vessel.
And our mission today is to trace how this ancient, really devastating warning to the nation of Israel serves as a direct, urgent blueprint for modern Christian life today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how a tool or a vessel or even an entire nation becomes fundamentally useless, we first have to understand what it was, engineered to do in the first place.
You really can't define useless until you establish what useful actually means.
If we look at the historical foundation of ancient Israel from the source text, this wasn't just some random amalgamation of nomadic tribes who, decided to draw a border and call themselves a country.
Right, it wasn't just a political alliance.
No, not at all. God specifically chose the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for a highly exclusive relationship. And it wasn't a loose, casual affiliation. It was a binding covenant.
And I think we need to pause on that word because in the ancient Near East, a covenant like that, it defined a people's entire identity.
Yes.
God wasn't meant to be just a weekend deity that they occasionally threw a festival for. He was their actual king.
Right.
He was their legislative branch, their protector, their whole reason for drawing breath. And their singular purpose was to function as a vessel. They were meant to be this living, breathing display case.
To show all the surrounding pagan nations that there was one true God.
Right. And to prove his power. That was the whole point.
That was the job description.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem arises when Israel's population grows, right? They become this settled, powerful entity in the land, and they start looking over the fence at their geopolitical neighbors.
As you do.
As you do. They look around, and suddenly they decide they want what everyone else has, which is a human king.
Okay, wait. I have to jump in here because if we are looking at this purely through the lens of ancient geopolitics, a decentralized tribal confederacy seems like a massive military liability.
Sure.
Right. Having a centralized human king with a standing army and fortified capital, that just seems like basic pragmatic survival in the ancient Near East.
It makes sense on paper.
Yeah. Is wanting a king really that profound of a spiritual betrayal? It feels like trading in a highly unique custom operating system because you realize everyone else in your industry is using a standard compatible brand. You just want your nation to interface smoothly with the rest of the world.
What's fascinating here is that what appears to be a purely practical geopolitical adjustment was actually the ultimate spiritual rejection. Yeah. By demanding a human king, Israel wasn't just updating their government structure to be more, efficient. They were declaring that God's invisible, hands-on leadership was no longer sufficient for their security.
They wanted immediate accountability.
Exactly. That is the psychological driver here.
Yeah.
They looked at the unseen God who had, historically delivered them from Egypt, and they decided they preferred a man with a crown, a chariot, and a spear who they could actually see standing right in front of them.
Because if something goes wrong, you can point at that guy.
Right. When you have a human king, if the crops fail or a war is lost, you have a tangible person to blame. You can depose a king.
But you cannot depose Yahweh.
Exactly. Asking for a king was an attempt to take control of their own destiny. It was the moment the precision tool decided it wanted to be a completely different kind of tool.
Wow. And once you outsource your ultimate security to a human system, the culture just naturally follows. The source makes it clear that this shift in leadership opened the floodgates to complete cultural assimilation.
Oh, totally.
Because once you decide you need to look like the neighboring nations in how you are governed, you inevitably start looking like them in every other aspect of life. So Israel started aggressively mixing with the surrounding cultures.
They adopted their religious practices.
Right. They started bowing down to foreign gods, literally carving idols out of wood and stone.
Which is a staggering psychological departure if you think about it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the descendants of the Exodus. They traded the living God who dismantled the entire Egyptian empire for carved pieces of timber.
Hoping those stationary objects would give them better weather or fertile soil.
Exactly. What began as a seemingly pragmatic desire for a monarch metastasized into abandoning the covenant entirely.
But wait, if this was a binding, exclusive legal covenant like we established, and they are openly breaching the most fundamental terms by crowning kings and carving idols, why wasn't the plug pulled right then?
That's a good question.
I mean, from a contractual standpoint, the agreement is void, right?
Well,
Like, keep going with them.
because of the tension between God's justice and his long-suffering nature. The covenant was breached, yes, but God's immediate response wasn't annihilation, it was intervention.
Okay.
He sent prophets, and Hosea was one of these prophets. Their job was to act as an aggressive early warning system, to basically jolt the people back to the reality of the covenant they were violating.
The check engine light was flashing violently on the dashboard.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And they put a piece of tape over the light.
Oh, man.
They ignored the prophets, they silenced the warnings, and they kept pushing toward assimilation. And eventually, the natural consequences of that breach arrived. God's protective hand lifted, and the devastation was absolute.
They were defeated in war.
Yes, stripped of their land, taken into exile. And the brutal irony here is that they were conquered and destroyed by the very nations they had compromised their faith to emulate.
Wow. The neighbors they tried so hard to impress became their captors. But, reading through the source, the deeper tragedy here isn't just the military defeat or the loss of real estate. It's the PR disaster.
Oh, absolutely. The PR disaster is huge.
Think about how ancient people viewed warfare. If the Assyrian army beats the Israelite army, the Assyrians don't think, oh, wow, Israel really breached their internal covenant with their deity.
No, they don't care about that.
They think, our God Ashur just beat up Yahweh.
Right. That ancient mindset is crucial to understand. The patron deity of a conquered nation was viewed as impotent, as weak.
Yeah.
So by abandoning their reliance on God to be like everyone else, Israel didn't just fail as a nation. They actively assassinated God's reputation on the global stage.
The Israelites were mocked. And by extension, their God was insulted by these pagan empires.
Their original purpose to be a vessel showcasing God's unrivaled power, it backfired completely.
The vessel was shattered, and the pieces were used to mock the craftsman.
That's a great way to put it. They became, in the exact words of Hosea 8.8 among the nations, like a useless vessel.
Just another piece of trash in the debris of fallen kingdoms.
Yep.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because we aren't just doing an autopsy on ancient Near Eastern history today. The source pivots heavily here. The spiritual mechanics that ruined ancient Israel are identical to the pressures facing people who follow Jesus today.
It's the exact same dynamic.
The blueprint for Israel is perfectly mirrored in the blueprint for the modern Christian. I mean, the document quotes Jesus explicitly telling his followers, I chose you to bear fruit. And the Apostle Paul consistently described believers using this exact same vessel imagery.
Right, as tools meant to carry and demonstrate God's glory to the surrounding world.
So the continuity is striking.
It really is.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern Christian's purpose is exactly the same as ancient Israel's. To be a living, breathing demonstration of God's character to a watching culture.
But there's a catch, right?
There's a massive catch. Modern believers are attempting to fulfill this purpose in an incredibly hostile environment. I mean, Jesus described this tension by telling his followers they must be in the world but not of the world.
Which is an incredibly difficult needle to thread.
It really is.
To visualize how this actually works, think about a submarine.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, a submarine is engineered for a very specific, incredibly hostile environment. It is designed to be completely submerged in the crushing pressure of the ocean, surrounded by water on all sides, without letting a single drop of that ocean inside the hull.
Right.
That is being in the water, but not of the water.
Exactly.
But imagine if the crew of that submarine gets tired of being so isolated. They want to be, more compatible with the marine life. They want to experience the ocean like the fish do. So in an effort to blend in, they just open the hatches.
Well, the submarine doesn't become part of the ocean ecosystem.
No.
It just sinks. It loses its buoyancy, its structural integrity, and its entire reason for existing.
It goes straight to the bottom and becomes a useless vessel.
Yep.
And that mechanism, that urge of opening the hatches just to blend in, is exactly what modern cultural assimilation looks like. I mean, we aren't carving wooden statues of Baal in the suburbs anymore.
No, we're not doing that.
But we are absolutely bowing to modern idols. The source details how we chase the culture's version of success. We worship at the altar of money, status, and unchecked pleasure.
And we have to ask why those specific things are our modern idols.
Yeah.
It goes right back to that psychological drive for control we saw with Israel wanting a human king.
Right.
An idol is simply an alternate mechanism for security. The ancient farmer worshipped a weather god to guarantee a predictable harvest because trusting an invisible god felt too risky, too out of their control.
Too vulnerable.
Exactly. Today, a modern professional might worship their career trajectory, or their social status, or their investment portfolio for the exact same reason.
To guarantee a predictable, secure future without having to genuinely rely on God.
It's an attempt to insulate ourselves from vulnerability.
We want a tangible king we can see. We want a bank account we can log into and verify.
We want the math to add up. And when a person whose designated cosmic purpose is to reflect God's kingdom starts pouring all their daily energy into acquiring wealth, or climbing the social ladder, or maximizing their own personal comfort, the original purpose is displaced.
The hatches are open?
The hatches are wide open. The culture floods in, and the vessel sinks.
So what does this all mean for the listener? How does someone living in the reality of the 21st century actually avoid this? Because, the pressure to open the hatches is immense.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Every advertisement, every corporate structure, every social media algorithm is actively designed to normalize the culture's values and make you feel strange or even foolish for resisting them. So how do you avoid becoming the junk drawer tool?
Well, the source gives a clear remedy, but it's not easy. It requires extreme daily intentionality. You cannot drift into being a useful vessel.
Right, drifting always goes downstream.
Always. And the current of modern culture is always moving towards self-reliance and secularism. So to avoid becoming Hosea 8.8, a believer has to actively protect their spiritual integrity. And this isn't just about intellectual assent.
Right.
It isn't about perfectly passing a theological exam or just holding the correct historical beliefs in your head.
Because beliefs without friction are just theories. It requires actionable, real-time choices.
Daily friction against the grain of the surrounding society.
Yeah.
If the cultural default is to acquire wealth and hoard resources at all costs, the active vessel-preserving choice is to practice radical generosity.
Okay, yeah.
If the cultural default is to ruthlessly seek status and crush the competition, the active choice is to seek service and lift others up.
It means walking into your workplace or your neighborhood or your university and consciously deciding not to operate on the same self-serving metrics everyone else is using.
Exactly. It is rejecting the human king over and over again every single morning.
Every single morning. And the profound part is a positive result of embracing that friction. When you actually keep the hatches closed, when the submarine maintains its integrity, it doesn't just survive, it becomes incredibly useful.
It does what it was made to do.
Right. A life lived with that kind of spiritual integrity actually produces the fruit Jesus talked about. It provides tangible evidence to a skeptical, exhausted world that God's power and grace are real. You fulfill the exact mandate that ancient Israel fumbled.
You become the display case. In a world characterized by anxiety, greed, and superficiality, a person who operates with genuine peace, integrity, and selfless love becomes a highly disruptive, undeniable force.
Disruptive in the best way.
Yes, they become the successful vessel.
And that brings us to the ultimate, unavoidable choice. Because based on the source material, we are looking at a stark, binary outcome. On one hand, you can choose the path of least resistance.
Which is so tempting.
It is. You can blend in, open the hatches, assimilate, and eventually hear the same tragic verdict delivered to ancient Israel. You are a useless vessel.
But on the other hand,
On the other hand, you can choose the friction. You can maintain your structural integrity and actually produce life-giving results in a culture that desperately needs to see what a functional relationship with God looks like.
It is an immense weight of responsibility, but it's also the greatest possible privilege. We are not designed to be dormant.
No.
We are designed to be filled and poured out.
Which raises an important question for all of us to walk away with today, something to really mull over. If a vessel's ultimate usefulness is determined by what it is filled with, well, what exactly is modern culture pouring into you every single day?
Mhm.
And is it secretly displacing the very purpose you were originally designed to carry?